She was frozen to the bench, not asleep, not resting, frozen. Her gray jumpsuit clung to her soaked skin like paper. Her lips were cracked and blue, her fingers stiff, her body curled in on itself, like it had given up trying to stay warm. And in her frozen hand was a torn photo, a younger girl smiling in a hospital bed, the edges stained and curling from years of being held. Across the street, neon advertisements for luxury brain implants blinked against the glass towers of Neon Spire. Behind them, heated penthouses pulsed with light and music, oblivious to the fact that a woman had just collapsed and died under their feet. And the man who let her walk into that storm, the one who just fired her for being 7 minutes late, he was on his way to finalize a $500 million deal until he saw a crumpled shape in the snow and realized it was her, the maid, the one who used to adjust the AI lights in his penthouse, the one who made his espresso taste exactly the way he liked it, the woman he never once bothered to ask. "Are you okay? If this is your first time here, and you believe people deserve to be seen before it's too late, please subscribe to the channel. And if this story moves you even a little, give it a like. It tells the algorithm this matters. Now let's rewind. You need to see where it all began. Neon Spire was a marvel, at least. That's what the commercial said. A metropolis where every skyscraper shimmered like crystal, wrapped in animated holograms that danced above the clouds. Autonomous rail cars hummed along magnetic tracks. Drones zigzagged across the skyline like fireflies. And the air, at least up high, was always a perfect 72 degrees. But down below, the wind bit. The snow didn't melt. And if you weren't rich enough to buy warmth, you walked through the ice like everyone else, head down, collar up, hoping your boots would hold. The rich didn't take notice of the storm. Their apartments adjusted the weather indoors. Their jackets were lined with nanofiber heat. Their doors opened when they thought about leaving. The poor, though, they waited for stalled trains. And tonight, trains weren't running on time. Lila Voss was 29 years old, a maintenance worker for Neurosynth's CEO, Elias Kane, for 5 years. She had lived in the shadows of his success, calibrating his espresso machine, fine-tuning his hollow windows, syncing the temperature of his floors to his moods. She never missed a day, never spoke unless spoken to, never asked for more than her weekly pay and a few moments to check her phone on break. What no one knew, not Elias, not the AI security, was that Lila had been secretly living in the utility closet outside the penthouse's west corridor. It was barely big enough to stretch her legs, but it was warm, and every cent she saved went to her sister, Mira, who was fighting cancer in a crumbling rural clinic 5 hours from the city, and to her brother, Torin, who was barely hanging on to his spot in school. Rent? That was a luxury Lila couldn't afford. Comfort? That had been traded for survival long ago. Tonight, she was running. The mag train had frozen mid-tunnel. She waited. Then she walked. 2 miles in sub-zero winds. Her fingers had gone numb, but she pressed the elevator button like she always did. Clean, direct, on time. Only she wasn't. She was 7 minutes late, inside the penthouse. Elias Kane didn't look up. "You're late," he said. His voice was even, emotionless. His back to the door. Lila bowed her head, snow dripping from her collar. She started. "No excuses." Elias cut her off. "Precision is non-negotiable. You're dismissed. Security has already been notified." He never turned around, never saw the way her mouth trembled, or how her knuckles gripped the side of her uniform to keep from shaking. He didn't care. Elias Kane had somewhere to be, somewhere warm. Lila walked out without a word, not because she had nothing to say, but because she had learned, over and over, that people like her didn't get heard. She made it as far as Nexus Park. The rich passed through here on their way to dinners, galas, exclusive VR lounges. Tonight, it was empty. The storm had cleared it out, except for the benches. One of them glowed faintly, a solar-powered heating unit, still active beneath a layer of snow. She sat, or maybe collapsed. Her body sagged as her mind shut down. Her legs gave up. Her breathing slowed. She pulled out her sister's photo and held it against her chest. And for a few brief moments, she felt warm again. Not because of the bench, but because she saw Mira's smile, heard Torin's voice, remembered what she was fighting for, somewhere across town. Elias Kane stepped out of his vehicle. The system had glitched. Traffic halted. He had to walk 2 blocks through the park to reach his meeting. He grumbled as the wind hit his face, tugged at the lapels of his $1,000 thermal coat. Then he saw it, a shape on the bench. At first, he thought it was debris, some trash blown from the market. Then he saw the photo, the jumpsuit, the face, and for the first time in his adult life, Elias Kane felt something crawl into his chest that no algorithm could predict. Guilt. The storm hadn't killed Lila Voss. The system did. And he was the system. Elias Kane had never seen death before. Not this close. Not this personal. He stood motionless under the pale, flickering light of the Nexus Park path, staring at the woman curled up on the bench, her skin dusted with frost, her body frighteningly still. For a moment, he thought she was already gone. His breath caught. Not because he was cold. His coat's smart fabric thermal lining adjusted instantly to the chill, but because recognition hit him like a punch to the chest. That face, those fingers, that jumpsuit with the neurosynth maintenance patch still clinging to the shoulder. It was Lila Voss, the woman he fired only hours ago, the woman who never raised her voice, never once came to him with a complaint, and who now looked like a discarded shadow in the most expensive neighborhood in Neon Spire. He dropped to one knee, the snow crunching beneath his polished boots. "Lila," he said, softly at first, then louder. "Lila!" Her head tilted slightly, but there was no answer. Her fingers clutched something, a photograph, stiff with moisture and worn at the edges. A younger woman smiled up at him from the image, pale and bald, lying in a hospital bed. For a long second, Elias didn't move, didn't breathe, because that picture, this frozen woman, didn't belong on a bench like this. Not in his city. Not after everything she'd done for him. Snapping back into action. Elias tapped the neural interface in his temple, triggering an emergency override. Drone medical response. Priority 1, location Nexus Park, northeast bench, he commanded. A soft beep confirmed receipt. His voice, usually smooth and controlled, cracked on the word priority. Within 90 seconds, 2 autonomous med drones buzzed into view from overhead, their red strobes cutting through the icy air. Hypothermic female, possible respiratory suppression, Elias relayed, gesturing to her body. Vitals dropping. Get her to NMC immediately. The drones began scanning, tiny arms whirring with precision as they hovered over Lila's form. He stepped back but couldn't take his eyes off her. The tech around him, the sensors, the stabilizers, the injectable thermal serum, worked flawlessly. Of course it did. His company had funded most of it. Yet in all that brilliance, he had never once stopped to ask how many of his staff ever needed it. Never wondered who lived in shadows beneath his glass towers. Never cared. Until now. As the drones lifted Lila into the air, her limp body suspended beneath glowing white stabilizer panels. Something shifted inside Elias. It was faint, but real. The cold that seeped into his gloves wasn't just temperature. It was guilt. A bitter, unfamiliar kind. The kind that whispers, "You did this." He followed the drones without thinking. brushing snow from his lapel. He canceled his meeting, one of the biggest of his career, with a 3-word message to his assistant. Reschedule, medical emergency. When Jackson replied with a flurry of concern and logistical questions, Elias ignored them. Nothing else mattered now. Not the board, not the Neuralink expansion contract, not the shareholder call. Lila mattered, and she had mattered long before he noticed. At Neon Spire Medical Complex, the city's most advanced hospital, Lila was rushed into critical care. The lobby's curved walls shimmered with soothing holographics, flowers blooming on demand, waves rolling over white sand, all meant to keep patients calm. But Elias wasn't calm. He sat in the observation suite overlooking the ICU, watching as robotic arms carefully removed Lila's soaked clothing, replaced it with heated compression fabric, and inserted a trio of plasma lines into her arm. Dr. Lena Quinn, a tall woman with salt-streaked hair and steel-gray eyes, entered without fanfare. "She has severe hypothermia," she said, getting right to the point. "Core body temp was 28.1 Celsius when she arrived. She's lucky she made it here alive." Elias didn't respond. His eyes stayed locked on the glass. "She needs time, and heat, and rest. But make no mistake, Mr. Kane, another 30 minutes out there, and you'd be looking at a body bag." Her voice wasn't cruel. It was just honest. The kind of honesty Elias hadn't heard in years. He nodded slowly, then asked, "Did she have an address on file?" "Doctor." Quinn tapped her datapad. "No. Her records list her work ID. That's it. No home address, no emergency contact, no recent insurance claims. It's like she lived off-grid." Elias closed his eyes. Of course. Of course she did. She had been right under his nose all this time, cleaning his AI systems, updating his smart windows, and when she left each night, he just assumed she had somewhere to go. But the reality was worse than he imagined. He saw flashes, moments he barely noticed at the time, the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she always carried a small thermos and never ate with the others, how she never requested time off, how she never spoke unless spoken to, how she once mentioned her sister's treatments in passing. And he brushed it off with a nod. He stood and moved closer to the glass. Inside, Lila's body now lay under a thermal mesh, her chest rising steadily. Her face, still pale, still bruised by the wind, looked impossibly young in the low light, and suddenly, all the numbers that had ruled his life, projected earnings, stock percentages, cost per chip, they felt hollow, worthless, he whispered, not even realizing it. "I failed her." "Doctor," Quinn glanced at him. "You knew her?" Elias nodded slowly. "I fired her today, for being late." He couldn't even look the doctor in the eye. "She was never late, not once, until tonight." For the first time in a long time, Elias Kane, billionaire, genius, visionary, felt like a fool, not because he missed a meeting, but because he never saw the people who made his empire possible. He turned toward Dr. Quinn, his voice hoarse. "Please, do whatever she needs. Spare no expense." The doctor gave a faint nod. "She's lucky. Someone cared in time." Elias looked away. "No," he said softly. "She's not lucky. She's strong. I'm the one who's late." The beeping was steady, soft, measured. Machines glowed quietly in the corners, casting pale blue light across the transparent walls of the ICU suite. Everything felt precise, controlled, cold in a clinical way, like the city outside. But nothing about Elias Kane felt controlled anymore. He stood just outside the room, arms folded across his chest, watching Lila Voss through the glass as if trying to piece together a human puzzle he had never bothered to examine before. Her body, still frail and wrapped in a heated mesh cocoon, lay motionless beneath layers of biogel blankets and automated monitors. Thin tubes ran from her arms and into sterile fluid chambers beside the bed. Her hair, usually tucked under her work cap, spilled loosely over the pillow. She looked younger, vulnerable, and nothing like the invisible woman he'd passed in the hallway every day for the last 5 years. The truth was unbearable. He had seen her hundreds of times, spoken to her maybe twice. Not once did he ask where she went at night. Not once did he stop to wonder why she looked so tired. Now she was here, fighting for her life in the most advanced medical center in the city, and he was the reason. He hadn't pushed her into the storm, but he'd opened the door and let it take her. Doctor. Lena Quinn entered the room again, quiet as ever, her footsteps muffled by the soft tiling. "We've stabilized her core temperature," she said, glancing at the display on her tablet. "But the damage is deeper than we thought. Mild frostbite in both hands. She'll recover. But it'll take time. She'll be weak for a while." Elias nodded, but didn't look away from the glass. "Did she say anything? When she came in?" The doctor shook her head. "No, she was barely conscious, just clinging to that photograph." She paused. "You said she worked for you?" He exhaled slowly, as if confessing. "Yes, in maintenance. She was exceptional, quiet, precise, reliable." The words felt hollow now, like an afterthought. "She was never a problem. She never made noise, and I never paid attention." Dr. Quinn studied him for a moment. "She lived in a closet, didn't she?" Elias blinked. "What?" The doctor tapped her screen again. "We ran a scan on her biometrics. No sleep pattern consistent with residential living, no address on file, no digital lease. She's been off-grid for nearly a year. I've seen it before. Workers who can't afford rent, so they live inside the buildings they serve. Utility closets, storage bays, cleaning bays. They hide, they work, they vanish, and the city never notices." Her voice didn't carry judgment, only fact. But Elias still felt like the words had been hurled like stones. He stepped back from the glass, one hand on his chest, trying to hold something in place that had already cracked. His neural interface pinged. Another call from the board. He ignored it. Again. The 5th one since this morning. A message from Jackson blinked into his field of vision. "Investors nervous. Media picking up the drone photo. You need to respond." But Elias didn't move. The image of Lila on that bench, her body curled like a question mark, her hands blue with cold, was burned into his mind. That image was already out there, captured by surveillance drones, shared by anonymous accounts, now spreading across the social feed under the hashtag #NeonSpireNeglect. The world was starting to notice what he had refused to see. And for once, Elias didn't care about optics. He cared about her, this woman, this quiet soul who had been suffering in silence under his roof while he lectured at conferences about ethical innovation, who had given her energy, her time, and her health to his empire without ever once asking for praise. He sat down on the edge of the visitor's bench outside her room, elbows on knees, head in hands, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like gravity. He remembered a time, maybe a year ago, when the AI lighting system in the penthouse malfunctioned during a storm. It was 3 a.m. He woke up to strobing lights and glitching shadows, before he could even log a support request. Lila appeared in the doorway, toolbox in hand, calm as a winter lake. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak unless prompted. She worked quietly for 40 minutes while he pretended not to watch. When she left, the lights dimmed to the exact tone he preferred. Warm amber. Not too bright. He never thanked her. Never asked how long she'd been waiting in the hallway for the next emergency. Never asked if she had eaten. Now, sitting outside her ICU, that memory played on repeat. It wasn't just a memory. It was a warning, and he had missed it. He stood again, paced the corridor like a man waiting for news he didn't deserve. Then, finally, he turned to Dr. Quinn and said, "I need to find her family." The doctor raised an eyebrow. "Why?" Elias answered without hesitation. "Because she shouldn't wake up alone, and because they deserve to know what she went through to keep them alive." Dr. Quinn gave a small nod. "I'll pull whatever records I can, but if she's been off-grid, it may take time." Elias didn't blink. "Start now." He paused. "And charge everything to my account. Her care, her recovery, everything." The doctor offered a look, not quite approval, but not dismissal either. It was the look of someone who had seen enough people talk and do nothing, and was waiting to see what came next. Night fell over Neon Spire. The skyline flickered with light, neon pinks and electric blues dancing along the edges of a city too busy to care. But inside that glass-walled ICU, in the silence between machines and breath, something was changing. Elias sat there until the second shift nurse came in. He didn't leave. He didn't check the stock reports. He didn't answer a single call. He just watched. Because for the first time in a long, long time, Elias Kane wasn't thinking about neurosynth. He wasn't thinking about shareholders. He was thinking about a woman who never asked for recognition and nearly died because no one gave her any. The first sound she heard was the soft, rhythmic beep of the heart monitor, then the hum of something mechanical, a gentle whir, like distant wind behind glass. Lila's eyelids fluttered. The ceiling above her was strange, white, glowing faintly, almost too clean. For a moment, she couldn't move. Her limbs were heavy, wrapped in a warm pressure that felt foreign, like being swaddled under water. She blinked again. The light stung. Her lips were dry. Her throat ached. Everything hurt. Then, movement. A figure came into focus. A tall man in a charcoal coat, standing at the side of her bed. Not a nurse, not a doctor. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he hadn't slept. His voice, when it came, was low and hesitant. "Lila?" Her eyes narrowed. She knew that voice. Her heart jolted, even before her mind caught up. "Elias," she rasped, her voice barely audible. "Why are you here?" He stepped closer, cautiously, like approaching a wild animal he didn't want to spook. "You collapsed in the park. I found you," he said. "You've been here 2 days. In recovery." Lila turned her head away slowly, grimacing. "You fired me," she whispered, "for being late." The room fell silent except for the machines. "I know," Elias said softly. "And I was wrong." He pulled the chair closer but didn't sit. "You don't owe me anything, but I need to say this." She didn't look at him. Her gaze stayed fixed on the wall, distant and cold. "I was late one time," she said, her voice stronger now, though it trembled. "One time." Elias swallowed hard. "I remember. I ran through a blizzard," she continued. "I hadn't slept in 2 days. I was behind on Mira's medication. The payment window closed at midnight, and I had to transfer from an unsecured terminal. Then the mag train stalled, and I ran the last mile." Her hand twitched weakly. "I made it. 7 minutes late. And you didn't even ask why." Elias lowered his head. "No, I didn't." The words sat between them like weight. "I never asked you anything. Lila, not once. I never noticed what you carried, what you sacrificed. And now, I can't stop seeing it." She closed her eyes. "Do you know how much I made? After taxes? Rent? And clinic transfers? He shook his head, barely breathing. 460 credits. A month, she said. I lived in a closet, ate one meal a day. I slept sitting up. I didn't even tell my sister. I wanted her to believe I was okay. Her voice cracked. Not from drama, but exhaustion. I gave you everything I had. My body, my silence. And when I asked for nothing, you took what little I had left. Elias finally sat. Slowly, like the chair itself might reject him. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said. But I need to make this right. I've already paid for your sister's treatments. I found your brother. He's safe. They're coming tomorrow to see you. Lila's eyes opened, slowly, and for the first time. She looked at him, not as her boss, but as a man. Why? She asked. Why now? He didn't rush. He didn't deflect. Because when I saw you lying there, I realized I've spent my life building something that looked perfect on the outside and was completely hollow on the inside. His voice shook. You nearly died, and I didn't even know your last name. I failed you. I failed all of you, and I need to do better, starting with you. She watched him for a long moment, searching his face for insincerity, finding none. Still, her walls didn't fall. I don't want your pity, she said. This isn't pity, he replied. It's responsibility, and it's long overdue. She turned her face away again. You can't buy your way out of this. I'm not trying to, he said quietly. But I can make sure no one else gets ignored the way you were. There was silence for several minutes. The city outside the window flickered with distant light. The storm finally passed, the skyline glowing in pulsing rhythm. Elias stood to leave, sensing her need for rest. But just as he reached the door, she spoke again, almost a whisper. I dreamed about my sister, she said. She was laughing. Her hair was back. She said it was sunny outside. Her voice grew softer. I didn't think I'd wake up. Elias turned back. You did, he said. You woke up, and I'm glad you did. She didn't answer. Her eyelids had already begun to fall again. Elias stood there a moment longer, then walked into the hallway and sent a message to Jackson. Find her family. Bring them here, whatever it costs. Then he added, after a pause, also, I want to meet with every single person who works under my roof. Tomorrow. Quietly. One by one. That night. Elias didn't return to the penthouse. He stayed in the hospital's family lounge, still in his coat, sipping tea from a paper cup that had long gone cold. He stared out the frosted window, not at the city, but at his own reflection. The man who had never missed a quarterly report. The man who spoke at global tech summits and lectured about leadership and innovation. The man who let a woman sleep in a closet and never noticed. That man was cracking. And something new, something real, was beginning to emerge beneath the surface. He didn't know what came next. But he knew this. The world he had built could no longer be built on silence. And the woman lying in room 412 had just become the first person in a long time to make him feel human again. The image had gone viral. A single drone captured still, Lila Voss, crumpled on a bench in Nexus Park, her limbs curled inward, her uniform soaked, her fingers blue, had swept across every screen in Neon Spire. It was shared with hashtags like Neon Spire Neglect, Invisible Workers, and most damning of all, Kane knew. Within hours, news outlets were speculating, activist groups were mobilizing, and Neurosynth's stock had dipped just enough to catch the attention of its investors. But none of that mattered to Elias Kane. Not anymore. While the media swarmed outside his tower, demanding statements, trying to scan his face through tinted glass and heat-shielded entrances. Elias was inside, standing before his staff for the first time in his career without a script, without a podium, and without a shield. 50 employees filled the marble floor of the atrium: technicians, kitchen crew, drone operators, engineers, custodians, AI programmers, all of them tired, silent, and unsure why they'd been summoned. For a brief moment, Elias just stood there, hands in his coat pockets, eyes scanning the faces of people he had once walked past without seeing. Then, quietly, he began. 2 days ago, one of you nearly died. Her name was Lila Voss. She worked in this building for 5 years. She maintained our systems, fixed your errors, kept our tech from crashing in the middle of the night. She lived inside a closet. She ate once a day. She sent every spare credit to her sick sister, and I never noticed. I never asked. The room was still. No one moved. That failure is mine, he said, voice firm but hollow. I built a company that values performance, but not people, speed, but not stories. I fired Lila for being 7 minutes late. 7. And then I found her unconscious in the snow while I was on my way to sign a deal worth 500 million credits. He paused, looked down, let the weight settle. I am ashamed of what I've allowed to happen under my own roof. He continued. And I promise you, that ends now. He lifted his head, his voice steadier. Starting today, every full-time employee of Neurosynth's core tower will receive a 5,000 credit wellness bonus. You will also receive 2 weeks of mandatory paid leave. No questions asked. Housing stipends are being reviewed and will be increased. And every single employee in this building will be offered a one-on-one meeting with me, or my assistant Jackson, to share what needs to change. No AI filters, no performance scoring, just your words. Unfiltered, unmonitored, human. A few faces in the crowd shifted, not openly emotional, but something flickered behind tired eyes. Skepticism mixed with curiosity. One technician raised her hand. Is she okay? She asked. Elias answered without hesitation. She's alive. She's recovering at Neon Spire Medical. Her sister and brother arrive tomorrow. Someone else whispered. She lived here? Elias nodded. In a closet. For 8 months. Because I didn't pay attention. Because we didn't make it safe to be seen. When it was over, he didn't expect applause. He didn't want it. And none came. But as the crowd dispersed, a few paused. Some looked him in the eye for the first time. A young programmer named Reza simply nodded. One of the janitors. A quiet woman named Marta handed him a small note that read, She helped me fix the sleep unit last year. Never told anyone. Just did it. That night, Elias went back to the hospital, not as a CEO, but as a man trying to rebuild from the inside out. He brought a tablet and used hospital Wi-Fi to wire 75,000 credits toward Lila's sister's treatment fund. Then he set up a rent-controlled lease under Neurosynth's name for a 3-bedroom apartment in a safe, sunny district, fully furnished, paid in full for 5 years. The title was in Lila's name. Meanwhile, outside, the story kept growing. Talk shows debated what had happened. A popular vlogger wept while reading Lila's story aloud. Protesters gathered outside the tower with signs that said, "See us!" Investors called for damage control. But Elias declined every interview. Every one. He had nothing to sell. Only something to fix. Late that evening, as the sun disappeared behind Neon Spire's glass skyline, he returned to the hospital's west wing. This time, he didn't stop at the ICU. He walked past it and into the guest suite that had just been prepared. Sunlit, warm, with real flowers, hand-picked by Jackson, Sitting in a vase by the bed, Lila had been transferred here hours earlier. She lay half awake now, drowsy from medication but aware. "You're back," she murmured, her voice softer than before, but less brittle. Elias smiled faintly. "I told you I would be." "You always say that in press conferences," she said dryly. "Then vanish." His smile faded. "Not this time." She glanced around the room, noticed the change. The real linen sheets, the painted walls, the skyline outside the arched glass. "This isn't the ICU." "No," Elias said gently. "It's your room, for as long as you want it." "Why?" she asked again, not hostile, just tired. Elias sat beside her. "Because the city turned away from you. Because I did. And because healing should feel like dignity, not charity." She looked at him for a long time, then said nothing. And maybe that silence was more powerful than anything either of them could have spoken. Across the city, hashtag Lila Voss trended worldwide. But inside that small guest suite, things were quiet, personal, real. She lay back, her breath steady now, her hands warm. And Elias Kane, billionaire, tech mogul, architect of modern neural intelligence, sat quietly at her bedside, not to fix her, but to finally see her. The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days, casting a soft amber light across Neon Spire's glittering skyline. In the corner guest suite of the medical complex, Lila Voss sat upright for the first time, her back cushioned by firm pillows, her legs covered in a light blanket. The warmth on her skin felt foreign but comforting. Across from her, the floor-to-ceiling window offered a breathtaking view of the city. The magnetic rails gliding past towers of glass, drones weaving like silver birds across the sky. She watched them without envy, without resentment, just quiet observation. For the first time in years, she wasn't racing a deadline. She wasn't fixing a machine in silence. She wasn't hiding. She was resting. And in that stillness, something was beginning to return. Her voice, her presence, herself. A gentle knock broke the silence. Elias stepped in, carrying a thermos and 2 cups. "You said once you liked cinnamon tea," he said simply. Lila raised an eyebrow. "I said that in the elevator, over a year ago." "I remember now," he replied, setting the tray on the table. "I didn't listen before. I'm trying to now." She nodded slowly, took the cup. The warmth traveled through her fingers. "So," she said, after a long pause, "what now? You give me tea and think it's all forgiven?" He didn't flinch. "No, I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to ask if you'd talk with me. About anything. Or nothing. No pressure." She looked at him for a moment, studying his face, his posture, the absence of ego in his voice, and then gave the smallest shrug. "You're here. So talk." They sat together by the window, not as CEO and employee, but as 2 people who had come from very different worlds and met at the edge of collapse. Elias told her things he hadn't told anyone in years, how his father died in a factory explosion when he was 12, how his mother cleaned biotech labs until her hands cracked from the chemicals, how he swore to himself that he'd never be poor again. "I built walls around me," he said quietly. "I thought that was strength. Turns out, it was fear." Lila listened, not out of politeness but curiosity. She had never imagined Elias Kane had come from anything less than perfection. But now, sitting across from her in rolled-up sleeves and tired eyes, he looked real, human. When he asked about her sister Mira, Lila's voice softened. "She's stubborn," she said. "Stronger than me. If I'm honest, she never let me see her cry. Not once." Elias nodded. "Torrens her younger brother, right?" Lila smiled faintly. "Yeah, 17. Loves anything with wires. Probably could have designed his own drone by now if we had the money. Elias pulled a tablet from his coat pocket and placed it in her lap. The screen lit up with documents, enrollment forms, housing contracts, medical transfers. Your sister and brother moved into a new apartment yesterday. 3 bedrooms, safe district. Their names are on the lease, fully paid for, and Mira's treatment has already started. Dr. Quinn personally approved the facility. Lila blinked. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. You didn't have to. I know. Elias interrupted gently. But I did. Not as a favor. Not as guilt. Because they matter. And because you do. There was a silence after that. Heavy but not uncomfortable. Then Elias leaned forward. I want to offer you something else, he said. A role. A real one. Not cleaning floors. Not fixing machines in the shadows. Lila narrowed her eyes. What kind of role? Director of Employee Welfare, he said. Company-wide. All 20 neurosynth facilities. Salary, 120,000 credits. Full authority to audit internal culture. Wages, housing policies. No filters, no chain of command. You report directly to me. Lila froze. Why me? He didn't hesitate. Because you lived it. You saw what I never did. You survived it. You earned it. She stared at him. The offer sitting between them like a bridge she wasn't sure she could walk across. This isn't pity? She asked softly. No. He said, this is purpose. I'm not asking you to take it today or tomorrow. I'm just telling you it's yours if you want it. She leaned back slowly, letting the idea settle. After a long pause, she said, I'm not ready to say yes. Not yet. Elias nodded, standing. Then I'll wait. And if you say no, I'll respect that too. But just so you know, change is already happening, with or without the title, because of you. Before he turned to leave, Lila spoke again. If I do take it, I don't want flowers in the lobby. I don't want posters or branding campaigns. Elias smiled faintly. What do you want? She looked out at the city. I want every worker to know their name matters more than their badge ID. Later that afternoon, Mira and Torin arrived at the hospital. When Lila saw them walk through the door, Mira wrapped in a warm gray coat, Torin clutching a tablet he had clearly been programming during the ride. Something inside her cracked open. She reached out with trembling arms, and they both rushed to her side, wrapping her in laughter and tears. It was the first time in years that Lila had cried without shame. Elias stood back, watching the reunion quietly, and for once, he didn't feel the need to control the moment. He just let it be. That evening, as the city lights returned to full glow and the storm officially cleared, Elias sat in the neurosynth boardroom and announced sweeping labor reforms. Housing stipends were increased, meal programs expanded, anonymous grievance portals opened across all facilities, and most importantly, employee audits were no longer managed by AI. Human teams would oversee conditions, real people, led by someone who knew exactly what it meant to be invisible. We failed one of our own, Elias said during the private session. We won't do it again, in her guest suite. Lila looked at the job offer again. Her body still ached, and her pride still bore scars. But something had shifted. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was being asked to lead, not because of mercy, but because of merit. She touched her sister's hand, glanced at her brother's peaceful smile, then turned to the window one more time. The skyline shimmered, but this time, it didn't feel distant. It felt like something she might actually change. The chandeliers shimmered like falling stars, suspended from the mirrored ceiling of the grand ballroom inside Neurosynth's global headquarters. 1,000 guests filled the room. Politicians, venture capitalists, influencers, heads of state, executives in sharp suits and glowing accessories, each one dressed to dazzle under the shifting holographic lights. The annual charity gala had always been a spectacle of wealth, a carefully orchestrated evening designed to showcase progress and power. But tonight, something was different. There was no string quartet in the background, no dramatic unveiling of a new product, no overproduced promo video. Tonight. The hush in the room came from curiosity. Whispers traveled from table to table. "She's really here? Is that the woman from the photo? I heard she was offered a directorship." At the head of the room, the stage glowed soft gold, and standing in the wings, just behind the curtain, was Elias Kane. He adjusted his cufflink, not out of vanity, but nervousness, a feeling he hadn't known since the day of his first investor pitch. Across the stage stood Jackson, who nodded once, then stepped aside as Elias walked out into the light. He didn't speak right away. He looked out at the crowd, the people who had once celebrated him for his vision, his mind, his meteoric rise. Now they watched him with a different kind of attention, the kind that waits not for applause, but for truth. "Good evening," he began, voice clear but steady. "If you're here tonight expecting the usual, I'm going to disappoint you. This isn't about Neuralink expansions or investor growth or global dominance in cognitive AI. This is about a woman named Lila Voss." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The lights dimmed behind him, casting a warm, focused spotlight across the stage. "You all know the photo," Elias continued. "A woman, collapsed on a park bench, frostbitten, alone, dying. Some of you reposted it. Some of you condemned it. But what many of you didn't know was this. Lila worked for me. For 5 years. She maintained my penthouse systems. She fixed glitches you never saw. She kept the machine running while I stood on stages like this and took credit for how smooth everything looked." His voice wavered slightly. He let the pause linger. "She nearly died because I failed to see her." No one moved. No one interrupted. "We live in a city that celebrates speed, efficiency, optimization," Elias said. "But what good is any of it if we ignore the people holding it up from below?" He stepped to the side. "I can't undo what I did. I can't erase my silence, but I can listen now. And I want you to listen too. Because the person you're about to hear from isn't just a worker. She's not a symbol. She's not a story to go viral. She is a leader. And she's the reason this company, and maybe this city, has a chance to become something better." The room turned as the curtain lifted on the opposite side of the stage. And there she stood, Lila Voss, in a sleek silver-gray dress that shimmered like rain under soft light. Her hair pulled back in a low bun, her chin lifted, not in arrogance, but in earned strength. She took one slow step forward, then another. Her gait was steady, dignified. The murmurs ceased. Elias stepped back, letting her take the center, and the room fell utterly silent. She stood there for a full 5 seconds, surveying the crowd, not with awe, not with anger, but with calm. Then, she spoke. "I used to believe my voice didn't matter. That if I just worked hard enough, stayed quiet, stayed efficient, I'd be okay. But silence didn't save me. It nearly killed me." Her tone was even, her words clean. Every sentence fell into the room like a weight. "I slept in a closet. I skipped meals. I watched others pass by and polished shoes while I repaired their coffee dispensers. And no one asked where I went when my shift ended. I was invisible. But not anymore." The applause didn't come yet. The crowd was too stunned, too still. She continued. "Some of you are here tonight because you believe in change. Some of you are here because you're afraid of bad press. I don't care which one you are. I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to tell you that it ends here. The invisibility, the silence, the cost of dignity in a city obsessed with speed. Her voice sharpened just slightly. Neurosynth is pledging 10 million credits to employee housing programs. We're creating on-site mental health services, transparent wage audits, anonymous reporting that actually results in action. And every facility will be reviewed, not by algorithms, not by executives, but by the people who live it. And if that makes some of you uncomfortable, good. Then she paused, looked out again, softer now. I don't want statues. I don't want speeches. I want systems. I want the girl who's mopping the floor at midnight to know she matters as much as the man with a name on the wall. A beat. And I want her to know that the next time she's late by 7 minutes, someone will ask if she's okay. A hush held for just a moment longer. Then, slowly, steadily, the room erupted in applause. Not polite, not performative, but full, raw. Some guests stood. Others wiped their eyes. Jackson glanced toward Elias, who stood off to the side, unmoving, his face unreadable, until he finally smiled. Not the smile of a mogul, but of a man who had finally done something that mattered, after the gala. Lila stepped off the stage and found Mira and Torin waiting near the elevator. Mira embraced her with quiet pride, and Torin simply whispered, "You looked like yourself up there." They left the building together, not in a private drone or armored limo, but on foot, walking quietly through the city they had once feared. That night, back in their apartment, Lila sat by the window, tea in hand, watching the lights of Neon Spire pulse in the distance. The skyline hadn't changed. The towers were still made of glass and steel, but something had shifted. Something inside her. She had been forgotten. She had nearly died. But now, because she spoke, because she refused to vanish, she had become a light in the dark for others still waiting to be seen. Thank you for watching this story. If it moved you, even just a little, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that speak to the heart. We appreciate you being here. Until next time, take care, stay kind, and we'll see you soon.